gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is part 26 in the Cobra Jet series, also known as Slither. Now many of you have been following along, and I probably have picked up some more new viewers to the channel, and I want to let you know what the status is with this car at this point if you're new to the channel. What I started off with was a very rusty 1969 428 Cobra Jet car that belonged to a man named Charles. And his dream was to rebuild that car and make it a supercar in some ways, adding in performance suspension, widening the wheel wells to hold bigger tires, put in a bigger engine, all this sort of cool stuff that he was doing. And unfortunately, Charles has passed away. And at this point, we're starting over, sort of. His wife is taking over the project. And what they had initially agreed to was trying to build this car back to more of a stock configuration. And so that's what we're going to do. Now there are some things that I've already done to this car. I have put in mini tubs, and we're going to leave those in there. It's too difficult to take those out and try to rebuild back to more of an original style. We've already gone past the point of, let's say, originality, but there's no value in undoing what I've already done with the mini tubs. Now, mind you, this is a 428 car. So these cars would have had a bigger engine with a lot of torque, and a lot of torque means a lot of torsional twist and stuff like that within the car. So Charles had it in mind to put in frame connectors. Now you can look at that and go, well, do we need frame connectors if we're going back to a stock car? And his wife, his widow, said, well, if you were building this car for your wife, how would you do it? From a safety standpoint, I'm okay with putting in the frame connectors. I don't think it takes away from this car at all. It's already past the point of being in the original realm. So adding frame connectors will stiffen the car and help accommodate some of that torque that we can get from the 428. So I'm going to continue on and put in the frame connectors. Now, I'm going to show you some other things that are on the list of now to do things, and some things that I will be changing in order to try to keep this somewhat more, let's say, cost effective, and also sort of kind of in the original realm. So let me show you what my plans are. As I've mentioned, I put in the mini tubs from Detroit Speed. I have not completed that one on the passenger side, and I need to add the flange that is going to be cut off of this wheelhouse. So this is the wheelhouse from the driver's side, and this is the flange that I cut off from that one that I still need to weld onto this side. So I'm going to continue with that and make this all complete the way we started. Now, one of the ideas that we had talked about, Charles had wanted to widen out the quarter panels to make more room for big tires. We're not going to do that. One of the other ideas was, if we left the quarter panels, was to widen the inner structure for the outer wheelhouse. You can see it has that bit of a gap up there, and so we anticipated the wider tires, so we were going to make that a little bit wider, like extending it out this way by using part of the old or leftover piece from the inner. We're not going to do that. Going to leave that alone. So that's where we're at on that sort of thing. Continuing to the front, we're still going to put in, you know, the regular seat pans. So those are just sitting here in place, and I will leave the tunnel alone because we're not putting in the big transmission, so I can go ahead and just weld that in and make it solid. What we did find out was this car was actually a C6 transmission car, so it wasn't automatic. It had power steering and power brakes, and it did not come with air conditioning. So just keep that in mind. Now, down there is the frame connector that I've talked about before. That's one for the driver's side. I'm going to install that, and the other one is sitting in that box right there. So that's where we're at with the frame connectors. Now, one thing we're going to change and go back to, Charles had wanted to put air conditioning in his car, and to that end I had removed this chimney, as I call it, that sits inside of the cowl. And we're not going to put air conditioning back on this car. So I'm going to refit this. What I could do is the other things that will happen, of course I've got to work on getting the quarter panels on, the tail panel on, all that sort of thing. But for now, I want to complete the mini tubs, get this taken care of, and get the frame connectors underneath the car. So that's where we're at, and that's what I'm going to do. So as you saw, I took the hole puncher and put a series of holes on the flange, and of course trimmed this down to where it's going to sit on top of the Detroit Speed mini tub. And I also sprayed self-etching primer inside of the cavity there. And then once I take this flange and put in place, and I fitted it down into this corner really nice, it'll compress down, and I can clamp it down in place, weld all of the spot welds, and then I think I'm probably going to end up welding this whole perimeter here. I could do it in segments and then use seam sealer to fill it in, but I don't know. I may just go ahead and weld that whole thing just to make it look nicer. right, here's where we're at. I have, again, the passenger side welded in, and I have the driver's side all welded in, and I decided to go ahead and just weld the whole perimeter. I may do a little bit of grinding on this. I know I want to smooth out these welds here, the plug welds, but I may do a little bit of grinding here, and ultimately this will get seam sealer on top, which will help that blend in a bit. So one other thing that I'm working on, and I want to show you this, are these exhaust hangers. Now, you can see it has a big hole there and this angled hole over here, and that big hole has to go over the seatbelt mount. So this doesn't just fit, obviously. You know how it is. But I was starting to look at this thinking, well, why does it not fit? And what do I need to do to make it fit? Along with that, I have to locate these. Now, I don't know if anybody will ever ride in the back of this car, but these were the mounts that were inboard of this Wheelhouse. So I may have to find a way to put this somewhere. I don't know just yet. But the thing is, I need to work on that. So let me show you something that's a little interesting for the original car. Now, as you know, I've already shown you this. I've kept all of the rusted pieces that I've cut apart of the car that was here. And this is the transition panel. And what I noticed was the overlap. I don't know if it shows up very well in the camera or not, but it appears that those pieces, the reinforcements, were underneath the floor pan. So if you look, you can just see the edge there of the floor pan that went in. Same way on this side. Again, these are rusted all the pieces, but the overlap is there. So apparently they had put those pieces on the transition panel before they put the floor pan in. Now, am I going to worry about that? Probably not. I don't think anybody's going to be pulling up the carpet to look at this and see if that's the way they were made. But I will try to get, obviously, that piece to fit in that shape as it was intended. So these are left and right, and you can see the little plate there where the angle mount was. So I will make those fit, but it's just going to take a little bit of work. So my initial thought as I look at this is there any value to this corner? Anything that I gain by keeping that in that transition? Not really. The strength comes from this plate being welded to the transition panel. So you're reinforcing this, and that's really about it. You could get away with just this intersection right here being welded into the panel. So I will probably trim this, cut off this corner over here to make it fit into the shape that it needs, and get this at least as close as I can overlapping that hole. So that's probably the easy route. Otherwise, something would have to get cut loose, and we don't need to do that. Okay, so I need it to come over a good bit. You can probably see there's a hump right here. If I could get that to slip in there, that would be fantastic. However, I don't see it happening. I don't know how much overlap I have of the tunnel to the pan itself at this point. So I think what I'm going to do is just try to eliminate some of this corner over here. Even that's not quite enough. May have to reshape that just a little. I actually may end up cutting some of this off because that's how far it needs to go back. And yeah, I'm gonna make a pretty good cut. Metal's got to go somewhere. That's close. Still don't like that angle. I'm basically out of room now. I mean, I can get a bolt in there, I can get that to go any lower. I could see if I can knock that floor down a little bit. I'll live with that. I mean, it's a little bit high, but there's not much else I can do. You know, I don't think, yeah, we'll try it once. I don't want to damage this thing. Whoa, cool. Was not expecting that. I had a friend give me this new mega wand, old mega wand. Very handy. That's where it's going to go. It'll be good. All right, I have both of the plates welded in, so we'll be able to use the bolt holes for the seat belts. But again, I have to do something with these. So I think my plan is going to be, they're going to end up inside of the frame rail. So these spot welds here are for the frame rail, and we know that it runs right up against the inside of this. In fact, this is the edge of the hole where this was mounted. So what I plan to do is open up a panel here, cut a hole. I'll weld this to the inside of that piece and then re-weld the patch back in, and that should be sufficient for a seatbelt mount. I'll just put it in line with that little where the old bolt hole was. So that's going to be the fix. So I have welded in the seatbelt mount points on both sides, and I cleaned up the interior of the floor pan here just so we could have a good look at it. You know, there are some things that are probably a little different than a normal stamping, you know, or the original stamping. As an example, you know, these are already filled in from dynacorn, whereas you would have those plates that you would screw to the floor. So we're not going to open those up, we're going to leave that alone. I see a little bit of transitional difference, like from that side, just the shape of it, to here. It's almost like you can see a line right there where it was stamped, and this one doesn't have that line. Now, does it matter? No. I'm just pointing this out so you can see some of the differences. Now, what I could do, if I wanted to, is take a piece of bar stock and lay right there and whack it with a hammer, and it'll make that line reappear. So just some things that you need to look for or look at if you're interested in some variances between these. Now, I said before that you know, I'm going to put in the seat pans. I'm going to hold off on those for the moment, and I'll show you why in just a minute. I still need to weld the tunnel and get those welds in place because we're not changing that. And I mentioned that I was going to reinstall the chimney, and we've thought it over, talked about it, and they live in Florida. So I've already completed the removal of that opening, so we decided to leave it alone. We already have the air conditioning system, so we'll put it in the car and it'll have air conditioning. Now, of course there's a lot of things I still need to do in here. I have to grind down these welds, all that sort of thing. It's all part of the process. Same thing around the mini tubs and all that. So that'll come later, but I just want to point that out to you. Now, I have gotten underneath the car and I was checking out the frame connector. That is a really nice setup, but it doesn't fit dead on. Now, there may be some difference between an original car versus the dynacorn parts, but I'm going to set that up in place and show you what I find needs to happen to make that fit. And it's not uncommon that you have to modify things, but I'm going to show you what we need to do to get that in there. Okay, I'm going to try to do this in a couple segments here. You know, when I built this jig, I had built these standoffs to support the floor support while it was being constructed, and then this can come out because I have the supports on the rocker panels, on the pinch welds, and also the stuff holding the frame rail in place. So this isn't going anywhere. Now, the way this is supposed to work is this will slip up over, and I'll show you the back side in a minute, but this is supposed to slip up over the floor support and the frame rail in the back. What I'm running into as I look at this is I don't have enough clearance here because this is almost lined up and this is offset slightly to the rear. Over here we have the bracket for the parking brake. It's hitting that, and then further back, and I don't know if I can get it in the picture or not, there are humps over here where the floor pan has these dips in it, and this is designed to fit those dips. So what's going to have to happen, at least to start with, is I'm going to have to trim this front edge off so that I can move everything slightly forward to line this up better, and I'll have to trim off here at the parking brake so that it'll clear this bracket as well. Now, there's room that I have to make up for it to go up, so all this will line up. This may end up getting hammered at an angle so that it matches this, because this is at a slight angle as well. But initially, that's what I'm looking at. I'll reset the camera so you can see the rear section. So as I'll point out with this jig, this goes into what would be the spring perch, and then I have this secondary standoff that goes up into this jig hole on the bottom, and that adjusts for height up and down if I need to change anything. So with that, I lowered this out of the way, and the weight is supported here again with, can be, it's not even, the pinch welds aren't even doing anything, but it's there because it's supported here. So if I put this up in place, again, this needs to go up, and right now this transition is not doing very well right here, and I'm assuming now, you know how that is, I'm assuming that the base of this should fit flush to the bottom of the frame rail, but that's a pretty big gap over there. That's more than an inch there, and unless I guess you're supposed to trim this to fit, I don't know. The other thing is this gap here is tight for the most part. There's a little bit of a gap on this side. Now, you know, a lot of that can come into play is the floor pan shaped correctly, and you know, putting in the seat pans, I don't have any room for adjustment. So this may end up taking some massaging just to get it in place, and I may have to work this up slightly. So, you know, that's just part of the problem right now with how all this is put together. You know, it is what it is. Hopefully that catches what I want to show you. This right here, there's little cutouts here that are supposed to interact with these dips in the floor. And so by having, you know, when I move this slightly forward, that's going to help line those up as well. So I don't know, it's kind of, well, I can push the floor pan up and down, and that may be what has to happen. I don't know just yet, but that would help get this, allow this to go up in place. So yep, gonna take a little more work, and I'm not gonna be putting this in on this video. This is just too much to do right now, so at least give you an idea of what I'm dealing with. And that's why I do not want to put in the seat pans just yet. If there's something that needs to be adjusted up and down or moved, and I have those pans welded in, I'm not going to be able to move this metal in any direction. Okay, so here's where we're at. I finished welding in the mini tubs, the flanges, all that stuff. Very happy with how that looks. I did get the muffler support hanger plates, however you want to label those. I got those in, so I'm happy with that. I finished welding the front of the tunnel, and we came to a decision on the air conditioning. So it will have air conditioning. Now I also know that other parts have been found from the owner. They've been going through the pieces and parts for the car. They found the original carburetor, intake manifold, the heads, a variety of other things, and a bunch of new parts for the interior and stuff like that for inside the car. So that's a positive. Now we have to still figure out if the original block is there or not, and then of course what we're going to do about the transmission, being that it really was an automatic car, and so it's going to end up with probably the C6 back in it, I assume. I will continue with the frame rail connectors. There's going to be some effort put into that to make them fit, and that's just how it is. I don't have time to finish that up this week, so that'll probably be into the next video. Now I know that Charles wanted me to fully perimeter weld those in place. I'll take a look at that and see if we can justify that at this point. It may end up being plug welds along the perimeter or something to that effect, but I have to make them fit the floor pan much better. Now once I get those in, I can then also put in the seat pans, and other than doing a bunch of grinding, that's going to probably take care of the interior area of the car and the cowl and all that sort of thing. I still have the filler plates here that need to go on from the rear apron to the cowl, but I can't do that until I grind all the welds and smooth that up and make it look nice. So once I get the frame rails in, it's back to the back of the car, getting the quarter panels, you know, all finished up, lined up, and all that sort of thing, and weld that stuff together. So still a lot to do, but good progress, and I'm very happy with how it's looking right now. So if you're interested in anything that I've provided on this channel, you know, I demonstrate the R Captain welder. I've done videos on that. I've demonstrated Evolution power tools. a variety of different things. If you're interested in any of those, I have links in the description below. So if you want a discount, if you're, you want to buy something, you can do that, or I have an Amazon link. And I also have a link for Patreon. So if you want to be part of that and help support the channel, I encourage you to join Patreon. So that'll be it for this video. And until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.